Okay, let's get started. I call the September 22nd, 2020 Committee on Ways and Means to order, and I will call on Councilwoman Jackson to give us the invocation. Councilwoman Jackson?
I don't see her.
I don't think she's joined just yet.
Maybe that's her. Okay.
I don't see her on the line.
Okay. Then I'll just call on Council Member Mike Seekings to give us an invocation. Councilman Seekings?
Jennifer?
I think he may be having some technical
There she is.
issues on his end, but Councilwoman Jackson has signed on.
Okay, Councilman Seekings, Councilwoman Jackson just signed on, so we'll have her have the invocation. Councilwoman Jackson?
Thank you. I'm so sorry. I had a little computer technology glitch. Yes, let us bow our heads, please. Lord God, we ask you to be with us as we are here assembled to be making decisions this evening that benefit our citizens, our guests, ourselves, and everyone who comes into the boundary of the city of Charleston. We pray that we will be wise, that we will be courteous, that we will be available to be educated and to do your will. In your name we pray. Amen.
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 Do I hear a motion for approval of the July 20th, 2020 and the September 8th, 2020?
Mr. Chairman, the September 8th minutes will be deferred. It's just the July minutes.
Okay. So,
Second.
okay, that's on the July 20th, 2020 minutes. The
Yes.
September 8th, 2020 minutes have been deferred. All in favor, say aye.
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 The ayes have it. Next is budget, finance, and revenue collections, and ordinance authorizing the issuance of a City of Charleston Public Facilities Corporation installment purchase revenue bonds. City of Charleston, open paren close.
Move
I'll
for
move for
approval.
approval.
Second.
Moved and properly seconded. Any discussion on this item? If not, all in favor say aye.
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 The ayes have it. Item number 4.
Move for approval.
Second.
Moved and properly seconded. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 The ayes have it. Item number
Move
5.
for approval. Second.
Moved and properly seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, aye.
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 Item 6, did you get the amendment in separate cover?
We
On
did.
item 6?
For approval.
Second.
Discussion. Councilmember Waring.
Mr. Chairman, is this the item? I can't pull up my agenda. I'm having a glitch
Yeah.
on this.
This is the item with regard to the asphalt track, which
Right.
was part of the
Right.
amendment.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I got this about, I guess, about 2 hours or so ago, and I would ask that we defer this. And the reason I say that, our staff and Cost City has done a wonderful job with the renovation projects, Stony Fields to date. For some of the new members on council, there were some proposals out there to make that green space, knock the stadium down and make it green space. Stonyfield has been a part of the history of the city for in excess of 50 years. Now, it used to have a cinder track there, which basically crushed rock, and gravel that people used to run on. And today, this amendment is for an asphalt track. In 1967, I started running track on the asphalt track back at Old Middleton High School. That track is still there. But anybody who's an avid runner, when you run on asphalt, you develop shin splints. So when you see young people walking around with tape around your shins, that's where your muscle begins to separate from your bone, and it's very painful. We've gone, I don't know, maybe 80% of the way. we need to come up with a little bit more money. I know Mr. Mayor, part of the proposal, and I didn't have a chance to speak to the mayor about this one, so we're having this, all of us having this discussion at the onset right now. But the initial proposal was for NCAA track. Now, obviously, we don't necessarily need that, but we can get a better surface than asphalt. For this track will be a track I think that's going to be used at a high degree of regularity, just from the standpoint of community runners, with a pedestrian gate from the people that live in, on the peninsula and certainly the surrounding area. So when you look at the other high school tracks, and this is where we need to go back to CCSD, I think, Mr. Mayor, I think this settlement with us from that 2011 settlement was what, 2.4 million or whatever. I may be 100,000 on or off, but that was based on a 2011 settlement. As we fast forward now to 2020, you just simply cannot have the purchasing power in 2020 with 2011 dollars. That means the school district needs to come up a little bit better, and certainly we as a city maybe need to find out, even if we kick the can down the road on the track another year or so until revenues increase. But I think this doesn't pass the 50-year test. If you go to any of the newer high schools, West Ashley High School, which is now what, almost 20 years old, it certainly doesn't have an asphalt surface. If you look at the new track that they did up in North Charleston, right off of 526, it doesn't have that. You go over to Wando high schools, both of them, they don't have asphalt tracks. I think we're cutting ourselves short and the community short with that surface being asphalt over there. So, and I'm sure cost is coming into this, but only had 2 hours to think about it. In another year or so, we'll have another building or two online from West Edge, paying into the TIF, property taxes into the TIF. We need to do something that passes the 50-year test, and asphalt doesn't do it around that track.
I'll second the deferral if that was a motion.
I did
Yeah,
see.
it was a motion.
I did see Jason's hand first, then the mayor, then Peter.
Yeah, but it was a motion, so yes.
Was it moved and seconded? Yes, to defer. Yes, Jason. I mean, Councilman Zachary.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm just, for the record, I'm going to recuse myself from this vote.
Okay, understandable. Mayor Tecklenburg.
Well, I appreciate the experience that Councilmember Waring has as a track and field expert that I do not have. I could run around in a circle, but I was not a member of the track team. So I did not focus on, I'll be honest with y'all, on the surface of the track, and I'm all for us putting the best surface that we can. And so here's the only thing I would point out to Councilmember Waring and all of y'all, that the real time crunch is to finish getting the surcharge program done, the retaining wall. The surface of the track comes last, it's the last thing. So I wonder if we could handle the surface as a change order. I mean, the school district has already agreed to split the cost with us 50-50, and I think they'd stay good for that, for the differential between asphalt and whatever other surface you would propose. My thing I'm time sensitive about is go ahead and get the surcharging and the kind of infrastructure underneath it. It's the layout or the size of the track isn't going to change. It's just the surface. But anyway, I'd certainly, whatever the pleasure of council is, we could either defer it and renegotiate this one aspect of the contract with the district, come back next time, or proceed and just handle that as a change order.
Mr. Chairman, I would volunteer to
Well, you
change
have-
my.
Sorry, Councilmember Bashir was next, and then Councilman Jackson. Councilman Bashir.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. And I can add my expertise to track running as well. I was on my high school track team and have very fond memories of Stony Field track back in the day. And Councilmember Ware is right. I mean, it's no question that the difference in the surface has an impact on folks with shin splits and other injuries that you can have running track. And my question sort of was very much along the lines of what the mayor had just brought up. What does the recreation department feel about this, Councilmember and Mr. Chairman Gregory, as far as the delay that this may cause if we defer this for a significant period of time? I mean, I have no objection to deferring it for a couple of weeks, but what are we talking about for the deferral part of this?
I've had some preliminary, very, very recent, because wasn't able to get back to the mayor after Councilmember Waring and I had our conversation. So Jason and Laurie are aware of our interest in having the best track that we could afford out there, something other than asphalt. Some of those discussions, of course, they're aware of certain costs that was associated with our initial effort, which would have been substantial, but I don't think that that's what we're talking about. We're not talking about underpinning and the whole shebang. So I think Laurie and Jason's on the line. Laurie, Jason?
Councilmember Gregory, this is Laurie. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
So I have had an opportunity to speak with Jason Kronsberg. He will need to speak more directly to the overall project. One of the big things is having the football field available to us next fall. As you know, Burke's not playing home games this year. And I know that that's going to be of interest to Burke High School. So, and also the recreation department. Thankfully, with the COVID, we're not needing that football field this year. We're playing flag football, but we all hope that things change. I want to get the best track we can get as well. Timeline, though, we would like to be back in that facility in the fall of 2021 so that we can take care of Burke High School's needs and the city of Charleston's children's needs. But I'll let Jason speak to the timeline.
Jason, you're on mute.
Good evening, everyone. So regarding the timeline, the mayor was correct. It's really about getting the surcharge, the retaining walls, and all of the things in place, because as you know from the first surcharge effort, once the dirt goes in, it sits there for 6 to 10 months with no action. So I think it's a reasonable request, certainly, to go back to the school district, negotiate a change order to see if we can get that upgraded surface to the benefit of everyone. But hopefully we can get the surcharge contract ready. I know that the school district is ready to issue a notice to proceed, and they wouldn't do it without this agreement. So if there's any other questions, I'll try to answer them.
Yeah, just a quick question from me, Jason. If we do it as the mayor suggests, that we go forward with the approval, but however, when we conclude what the cost differential will be, that we put in a change order. I think that's the amendment I think that the mayor wants to place on the motion to defer. Am I correct, Mayor?
Well, if it's okay with council, I'd propose we proceed with the contract with the stipulation that we will come back to you with a change order to improve or change the surface of the track. But this would allow us to get the quote infrastructure of it going.
Okay, Councilmember. Oh, I'm sorry, Councilmember Jackson. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, I'm sorry. I was just going to say that if Councilmember Waring will withdraw the referral motion, then I would amend my motion to put the change order, condition it on the change order to upgrade the surface of the track once they get to that negotiation with the county.
Okay, I think
my motion was to approve the request, and then I would amend it to say that we would condition on making sure we had a change order that would upgrade the surface.
next is Councilwoman Del Chapo and then Councilmember Waring.
So Jason, you know, those of us in the AEC world, we do not like change orders.
That's right. That's right.
So if we deferred tonight and with kind of the understanding that you would go and have a conversation regarding a different surface, what's the difference in timeline of that versus if we approved tonight and then had to come back and approve a change order? Is one more compresses our timeline and the other would explode it?
So I think that if I can answer that as I heard it, that if it's deferred, we have to go back to the school district and then they have to update drawings and get a change order from the
Right, basically rebid with a different surface, or I mean, like, you know, redraw and new pricing of different.
Right, Mondo servicing is kind of one of the standards that goes in across the country. I'd have to defer to the school district. I don't know what it's going to take for them to get all of that work in place, and if it would get back in 2 weeks for the next council meeting. I'm not sure.
Okay.
Councilmember Waring. Oh, I'm sorry, Councilmember Del Chapo, you had a follow-up?
I do, thank you. So then, but essentially then what we're saying is if we said yes tonight and then they come back with a change order, then essentially work can go ahead and immediately commence.
That's right.
So in essence, it may actually help our timeline.
Right. So if
I think that's what I'm trying to be sensitive of, because I know there's a timeline issue.
If it gets approved tonight and then we go back to the school district and say, go back to your contractor, work up a change order, we have a lot of time to negotiate that deal versus getting that infrastructure in, which is the retaining wall on the marsh side, which went through an exhaustive permitting effort through the Army Corps of Engineers and the DHEC. So there was a lot of front end work to get the permit, and then but we have a lot of time to renegotiate that surfacing if we can get that infrastructure in place.
Okay. All right. That helps me. Thank you.
Councilmember Waring.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's not my intention to stop the surcharging of the site. It was just the surface of the track. And I'm like, I agree with Council Lady Del Chapo in that, change order, I just don't see why this can't rebid the surface. When I hear change order, and I'm a chairman of the a project for my church, and we right now going through a couple of change orders with the contractors. All I see is extra dollar signs for the contractor. But Mr. Kronsberg, did we bid this out, or did the school district bid this out?
No, this is the school district's project as part of the synthetic,
Okay.
the track, and the scoreboard.
Yeah, I have no problem, Councilwoman Jackson, withdrawing the deferral and changing it to going forward with the surcharge, but not the asphalt surfaces on the track.
Just as a follow-up, Jason, so are we saying that with a change order to a different surface, that would not affect the infrastructure issues at all? Am I correct?
I think it's a logical scenario that's correct, that it wouldn't affect the end schedule if we get that infrastructure in place, the surcharge, the retaining walls, and then we have many months to renegotiate with the school district and they can get updated pricing from their contractor on the alternate surfacing.
Okay, thank you. Council member.
I just wanted to follow up. Actually, the surface may be lighter if they use another surface besides, the ROC base and asphalt. That's a lot of weight. So, but yeah, I don't have any trouble withdrawing the deferral, amending it to move forward, except with the track surface.
Okay.
I second that.
I'd second that.
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor as amended, say aye.
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 Any opposes? The ayes have it. Item number 7. Parks Capital Projects approval.
I'll move for
Move for
approval.
approval.
Moved and properly seconded. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 Item number 8.
Move for approval.
Second.
Moved and properly seconded. Any discussion? All in favor of item 8, say aye.
Aye.
Item number 9, stormwater management approval of the Johns Island Restoration Plan to improve flood.
So moved.
I'll second.
Second.
Moved and properly seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Item number 10, stormwater management approval.
So moved.
Move for approval.
Second.
Moved and properly seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. Item 11,
Move
housing
for
and
approval.
community.
Second.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it. Planning, preservation, and sustainability, business and neighborhood services, approval 2.
Move for
Submit.
approval.
Approval.
Moved and properly seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Item 13, discussion of report from the Bennett Preservation Engineering.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
before, and I saw the mayor had a question too. He was up
Yeah.
first. Go ahead.
Rather
Mayor
than
Berg, yes.
question, I was going to ask you if you would allow me just to lead a little presentation by staff as to what they've learned since our last meeting regarding the smokestack.
Sure.
Yeah.
Councilman Seekings.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Mayor. I just, before we begin and go down this road, I just want to ask the question procedurally where we are tonight and where we're going forward. It shows that the discussion we had last time about the smokestacks is deferred for tonight. Any vote on that? Is that where we are? We're just going to take information tonight and this matter is deferred?
I think so. I think you're correct.
Okay.
I think that's correct, unless council is inspired to move forward with what had been recommended 2 weeks ago after hearing the information that we give you. But I was just going to seek the consensus of council one way or the other with this discussion, if that's okay.
Yes, it is, Mayor. Who will lead the discussion?
So I'll lead and call on first Edmund Most, who as directed by council, got back with our engineer, Craig Bennett, who really in a very timely manner has given us information about a more exact estimate on what it would cost for what I would call the preservation of the stacks as is, keeping them at their current height. Then I would also like to call on Shannon Scaff briefly to share with council our plans for, and this is whether we go one route or the other of notifying the property owners in the immediate vicinity in the very unlikely event that we felt an evacuation would be called for of the area. So first, Edmund, you want to share with us what Craig Bennett got back to you with?
Yes, sir, Mayor. So good evening, everyone. I just wanted you to know that I literally received this cost estimate at 4/26. They asked for 3 weeks. We told them you had 2. So they did the best they could, and we feel comfortable sharing these numbers. So what they did was they went out for a second opinion with a contractor and talked about how they could do a long-term preservation to both of these structures. In a nutshell, essentially, they would build an interior steel frame, if you will. They would have members going up vertically toward the top, and they would essentially have some rings and would all be welded together. And this would happen after the line of bricks were removed from both of the smokestacks. This is a complicated effort. There's a lot of different types of work involved. All of it would have to be done by scaffolding and initially by a crane, just because they can't put anybody inside of these structures. But we went through and we finalized a number at about right around $2.8 million. There may be a couple other costs in here that might drive it up a little bit, but we feel comfortable sharing this number. Now, if we were to go through this process, retaining Bennett to do this work under the emergency procurement method here, it would take them approximately 4 months to put together the design drawings, submit them for permitting, and about a month to get a construction contract to council for approval on the construction side. It would take about 7 months for the construction activity to actually, the mobilization and all the construction activity to happen on both stacks. So you're looking at, if you started this November 1st, they would finish up November 1st of 2021. So as a recap, all in cost, you're looking at about $2.8 million. It may go up a little bit more from there, but we feel comfortable with that number right now. And it has some contingencies built in there.
Great. So Edmund, thank you for that update. Regardless of whether we had proceeded with the proposal last time to take the stacks halfway down to get them safer and preserve them that way, there was a time lag even with that plan, not as long as a year. So one course or the other, we have to be prepared in the event that we had a prediction of gale force winds of managing a small evacuation around the perimeter of the stacks. So I asked our emergency management team to work on that. And Shannon, if you give us a brief report on that, I'd appreciate it.
Certainly, Mr. Mayor. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. I'll be brief here. Bennett Preservation Engineering stated the safety thresholds for the stacks are winds of 74 miles an hour or a seismic event in the area, which I still have some questions about. In both cases, residents would have to remain away from the hazard area until an inspection is deemed the area safe. Expected turnaround time of an inspection is 5 days. GIS identified 34 parcels within 225 feet, which includes 60 addresses, 41 of those being residential, and then 16 parcels within 135 feet, 26 addresses with 20 of those being residential. In the event of evacuation, the city of Charleston would likely have to close Drake Street between Cooper and Blake, Cooper Street between East Bay and America, and potentially a portion of Blake Street. The outreach plan is a four-pronged approach for the folks that would be in question here. An initial meeting with neighborhood leadership and addresses in the hazard zone, followed by a press release, a mailer, and a door-to-door visit by the fire marshal and emergency management. The sheltering plan is to provide hotel rooms for residents until the structures have been inspected and deemed safe. We will not know how many citizens to provide shelter for until the fire marshal has conducted a thorough outreach program and has identified every resident in the hazard area. And I understand that's going to be ongoing here pretty quick. CARTA and the city's recreation department will assist in transportation efforts for those who do not have the ability. When I think about, just step away from this for a minute, think about in terms of when we would make something like this happen. Obviously, if we have a hurricane this season, knock on wood, that's a low grade hurricane, 75 mile an hour winds, we're not likely to see an evacuation in Charleston in this area would be my guess. However, that would meet the threshold for those folks in that area. So what I would look to do is work with other city leaders to communicate a couple days in advance what our intentions are, have those folks make ready to evacuate, and then we would march down our timeline just as we've all come to expect in terms of when we would evacuate for a hurricane. So think in terms of 12 hours, 24 hours, 36 and 48, and we'll begin those discussions in advance of that event. And that would be just for, again, a threat with 74 mile an hour winds or greater. The big question here is a seismic event. I'm still looking for some clarity on that. What constitutes a seismic event for this? If it's something that registers on the Richter scale, and then you have to consider the aftershocks that could possibly occur. So there's some things to think about there with that. I'm going to try my ninja skills here with you and see if I can share a screen. Let me see here. Can everybody see this?
Not yet.
Okay. Okay.
So he was just going to show us, I think, a map of the block, the neighborhood. Here it comes, Shannon.
Okay. So that's essentially it. The two stars signify the towers themselves. Here's the legend here, the smokestack buffer within 135 feet, and then the outer ring is 225. And then you can see all those red areas would be the parcels that would be in question.
Terrific. All right, Shannon. So we get down, I think, essentially to the same question that I posed to council last week, was the differential in cost of going one route versus the other. I think 2 weeks ago, I estimated conservatively maybe that it would be about $3 million to preserve the stacks as is. You heard Edmund relay that we now think that might be 2.8. So certainly within the ballpark, but somewhere in that range is what it would take to fully preserve them. And we were at a place last time to take them down halfway and preserve them that way and make them safer. That it was going to, after we come back and do the brick pointing and all, was going to be about $750,000. So you're about a $2 million delta. Amy is on the line, and I think she would tell you, as most of our ad hoc budget committee members would know, and in all of our council, that in the general fund, we really don't have $2 million sitting around. The only possibility that I've thought of is to recast. If this is a real priority for council to go the distance, would be to recast the allocations that we have made to the Cooper River TIF district. These two stacks are in the district. They are eligible for funding. We have through our community development committee and agreement by council we issued a bond of 11, almost $12 million over a year ago, and we allocated that to affordable housing, to some sidewalk improvements, park improvements, flooding improvements, park improvements within the district. So we could pull that list out again and take away from some of those other priorities if that's the will of council. And I think that's just a consensus at this point that I'd like to hear from council. Would you all like to recast the TIF district funding to include the full preservation of the stacks to the detriment of those other projects, or go the lesser expensive route of taking them halfway down and saving them that way? Councilmember Mitchell.
Councilmember Mitchell.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I heard what you're saying about that, but we fought hard, and I fought hard even to maintain money at the TIF for affordable housing and for the drainage in that particular area. And I said it was a hard fight just getting that done. And I don't see myself voting to take the money out of the TIF for that particular smokestack. As I mentioned the last time, I said I might not be the best person in the world that people are going to like, but I always say when it comes between bricks and mortar and a human being, I'm going to look at the human being. We need housing here in the city of Charleston, affordable housing for people to stay here on this peninsula. And like I tell people all the time, this is not a place that I came to. This is not a place that I lived here all my life. Instead, I went to college and came back. I know that particular area too, as I stated, that we lived in that particular area back in 1949 when a lot of people who were talking about this was nowhere around. You see, when the smokestack was first mentioned, I called you, Mayor, and I spoke to you about it, that instead of trying to demolish the smokestack, let's see if we can bring it down and the presence of the smokestack will still be there to preserve what we're seeing there as a smokestack. And that's what I told the mayor, and that's what we came back with, that sort of be compromise, if you may, and bringing it down to a safe level, but it'll still be higher than the St. Julian Divine Center. It's not going to be that low, it's still going to be pretty high. It's just not going to be 136 feet in the air. So that's what was my opinion at that time, and that's what I was looking at. I said, either way, we're going to have to move the people out there, but if something happened, I don't want it on my conscience at all. We are looking at, I'm trying to be proactive and all this and still maintain the smokestack presence there, just not as high as it is now. But to take money out of the TIF, out of the drainage that we have for that area that's suffered for a long time around the public housing, around Cooper Street in that area, and not to put these affordable housing units in there, don't know what's going to happen in the near future with the money. I just can't see myself doing it. You know, I just can't see myself taking that money out of that to put in the smokestack that we are still trying to preserve, but it's just not going to be 136 feet in the air. So that's just my take on it.
Councilmember Mitchell, Mr. Chairman, if I may come back with one fact.
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
And I don't mean to complicate the decision, but I do want to share with you that the district is doing well. We got our numbers back from the county not too long ago. We do believe in another year or so that we would be able to afford another bond coming from this district. So I'm just being factual and real. You'd still be able to do those other things that we've allocated, but you might have to push them down the road a year. I'm just saying, eventually, with enough time, the TIF district would generate some more funding.
Councilwoman Jackson,
Give it back to you,
Councilmember Shea.
Thank you, Chairman. I guess I really appreciate that the staff worked so hard with the Bennett engineering consultants to be able to make this report 2 weeks to the day from when we deferred the decision to hopefully hear a preservation study. I'm just mindful of the people that were appealing to us 2 weeks ago for the reason that we did decide to defer, and the reasons that we did decide to seek this study on the feasibility and the ballpark cost of preserving the stacks as they exist today. And I don't think those groups have gone away, at least in my hearing. So these items were deferred tonight. Everyone assured the constituents who are the most concerned about what we were going to do were assured that we were deferring any vote about these decisions. I personally, I really also applaud Shannon's staff for coming back to us with the plan that will be workable no matter when. I mean, if we're talking a year, or even if we're talking 7 months, we're still rolling the dice about our current storm season. And I just feel like it would be responsive of us as the elected representatives of people from this district, but also from the whole city who's been appealing to us to preserve these as the industrial symbols that people have convinced me they really care about. To be honest, I was surprised that the neighborhood felt so strongly about these smokestacks, knowing their history. But I don't live there. I don't live in their skin. I don't walk in the shoes of the people who have had this kind of history in Charleston. I'm trying to live and learn in a community that is diverse and growing and changing. And I do feel like we all need to be sensitive to what we're being asked. So I can't see voting for a $3 million expense if we don't have the total cooperation and help from the community. I'm glad to know that we could potentially bond for additional money, but I just don't feel like I want to make a decision right this minute, Mayor, based on a report that we haven't even seen. We haven't been able to give it to the preservationists in the community who are consulting with experts that I know are available to us as another set of eyes to all of these reports. So I would ask that we leave the two items deferred the way that the public thought they were going to be this evening. And maybe we can revisit this in 2 weeks. I'm really glad to know we've got the emergency plan. And I really feel like what we've heard from the people who have appealed to us deserve our respect and the responsibility to just wait and give ourselves time to make a really whole quality decision.
Councilmember Shade and then Councilmember Mitchell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I appreciate the opportunity that we had to think about this over a 2-week period of time. And quite frankly, my opinion on this thing has changed. These are smokestacks. They weren't built on the south side of Broad Street. They were erected on the east side of Charleston. And these were things that were industrial pollutants. They polluted the air. There was maybe an improvement over an open field with dump trash. But these things were polluting the air of these local residents. This is not something that has, to me, any historical significance. Yeah, they look pretty cool hanging up there in the air right now, but these are industrial pollutants. And we want to keep them up there as what? A reminder that we polluted the neighbors in that community? This is a $3 million project. It's a hazard to the community. Let's tear them down. I don't want them halfway. Let's just tear them down and let's move on with this. This is not something, we talked and kind of jokingly about this at our budget committee about the fire tower over there behind the old fire station. That's something we want to preserve and maintain. That's a different story altogether. It has a history behind it. But this is not a pleasant history we're talking about with smokestacks. So if we're going to vote on this, I'm just voicing my opinion on it. I just want to go ahead and remove the smokestacks and not fool with this much longer. Let's move on to other business. It's a danger to the community. It was a danger to the community back then. It's now a real danger to the community with it falling down and hurting somebody, maybe killing some folks. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, Councilmember Mitchell, did I hear your motion to bring them down to half size?
No, wait, no, I just want to make a comment. I'm just listening to all the dialogues that's happening, but as I stated many times, I represent that district, and people said that they're hearing all these things from everybody else. I'm hearing from other people in the district that, hey, it should be torn down. I said, no, just to preserve it because some people want it preserved. And that's why it came down when I talk about halfway. A lot of the people that you are talking to, I don't know who they are, but a lot of the information from Johnson Street all the way back, they said, take it down. What good is doing there? Just stand up there and just calling someone. They don't care about the smokestack as much as other people coming here, just moving here, want that smokestack to stay. And I'm telling you facts, because I'm out there every day. I'm out there till 1 o'clock in the morning, out on that east side. That's where I'm there every day, all the time. So I hear these things. I hear a few people talking about, oh, let it stay. It's history. History where? For a incinerator that was there burning trash so the smoke can go up in the air. Yeah. That's why I came to that conclusion of let's bringing it down halfway where it's safe for everyone and they're still there, that they can still preserve the smokestack instead of demolishing the whole smokestack. That's what it came from, and it came from me. Because I said so many people wanted to stay, so that's why I did what I did. And I said, no, it's using money, other money to do other things. I just don't see it. You know, I think that's a compromise. That's a compromise to me.
Yeah, Councilmember Mitchell, there's a motion on the floor to defer while it hasn't been seconded. Am I hearing a motion from you?
There's nothing to defer right now.
No.
Well, continue to defer. Okay.
They are.
It's already deferred.
That's what I mean. Leave it as is.
Unless council were to take an emergency change of the agenda to put them back on the agenda, which would require 2/3 vote. You know, like I said, y'all would have to be inspired to do that. I was hoping to get a consensus as to whether council would like for us, the administration, to bring you back a new contract with Mr. Bennett to proceed with the full preservation, or basically to leave it as is and bring you back next time the two items that are deferred today on the agenda.
Okay. Councilmember Waring.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Listen, we start talking about preservation and all of this, and the subject of safety is, you know, we're kicking it down the road. I agree with Councilman Shahid on this. Certainly, Councilman Mitchell, the compromise is, I'm ready to vote for that compromise. I was ready to vote for that compromise last week, but out of the deference toward safety, and let's see how what Mr. Bennett said. Mr. Bennett had come back and said, listen, this thing can handle maybe 70 or 75 mile an hour winds or whatever it was. We haven't finished this hurricane season. We celebrating, I guess, what is it now, 32 years of Hugo, after Hugo. Today, it's September 22nd, is when Hugo hit here. It's been in excess of 30 years since we had a major hurricane. We have been fortunate that the major events that have hit the coastal United States have happened in the Gulf. We pray for them, but we have been fortunate that none of those steered this way to hit us. It'll be interesting to see the people who want to keep it preserved, to see how many of those live in the shadow of what may fall down at the next heavy wind that comes through here. When I saw the crack and the pictures in the newspaper, now we're talking about potentially waiting until November of next year, which carries us through another hurricane season. We hadn't finished this hurricane season, but under the guise of preservation, and Councilman Mitchell is being very kind, but the people that want to keep them where they are, I bet you they don't live in the shadow under the threat of those bricks coming down upon them. So out of the deference of safety, it may not be on the agenda, but certainly put it on the agenda, Councilmember Mitchell. For that compromise, I would vote for it in a skinny minute, but leaving it up there, knowing that with the next heavy wind to come through, if one person gets disabled or certainly worse out of that, we all would regret that. You know why? Because we got caught up in the conversations instead of putting people's health first. That's what we have done all this year under COVID. Under tremendous pressure from others, we have made unpopular decisions in deference to the science on COVID, trying to help keep the people safe. And in this one, all you have to do is the strong wind comes along, and some people certainly is going to get hurt or maybe even die. So my position is to vote for that compromise. The Councilmember Mitchell, it is your district. I look forward to your leadership on the subject.
I want to ask one more question.
Councilmember Seekings had his hand up, and then I'll come back to you, Councilmember Mitchell. Councilmember Seekings.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Very briefly, in response to the mayor's question, my answer to that is yes. I think, I saw my agenda tonight, we would be hearing from Mr. Bennett. I don't know that he's on here. If he can bring us back and we can see and ask him some questions about the two paths that we might go. Also, Mayor, you brought something up that we hadn't considered before, and that is the performance of the TIF. Certainly like to see those numbers too, so that we can make an informed decision. And finally, hear from the public. I mean, there's been a lot of surmising what the public has to say. This shows us deferred tonight, so we don't know whether the public came or didn't come. But I think we should get full input on this. 2 weeks is not going to make that big a difference. Mr. Scaff has put together a safety plan. We're going to know what's coming ahead of us. So yes to your suggestion that we see both sides of this coin side by side. We get to hear from Mr. Bennett. We get to hear from the public on a matter that's not shown as deferred and make a complete decision from there. So I'm not going to vote to put it on the agenda to vote on it tonight. I think we should hear from the public and Mr. Bennett. And hear about the performance of the TIF too.
Yes. Councilmember Mitchell.
Yeah, one more thing I'm going to ask Mr. Mayor. Have you spoken to the Preservation Society and the Historical Foundation to see if they would come up with any money to assist with this, if they want this to stay, when they are talking about preserving it, if they're going to come up with some money to assist in keeping it and preserving it? What kind of money they're going to come up with when they're talking about preserving this and keeping it there? Have they come up with any money to assist with this?
The only offer has been for a second opinion, and the understanding that that might be $20,000 or $30,000 for an engineer, another engineer to look at it. I personally didn't feel that was necessary because Mr. Bennett was working with I think they're called the International Chimney Company. They worked with him very closely over the last 2 weeks, giving their expert opinion on how to preserve the chimneys if we chose to do so. So I think we have excellent advice from Mr. Bennett and the contractor. And anyway, that was all the offer that I know of.
Okay, well, what I'm gonna do, Mr. Chairman, what I'm gonna do, I'll let it ride for the next 2 weeks. I understand Councilman Waring what you said, but I'll let it ride for 2 more weeks. But 2 more weeks, wherever it come one way or the other, I'm gonna bring it up to the floor and we vote on it.
Okay.
That's it.
There's no action on this item. I haven't heard a second. I don't see any other hands. Okay, let's move
Mr.
on.
Chairman, I
Yes.
think Councilwoman Del Chapo, did you have your hand? Councilwoman Del Chapo?
I do. I think that's just what I wanted to understand. I agree with Councilman Seekings of let's look at the TIF in good conscience. I'll tell you off the bat, I'm not going to take money away from flooding and affordable housing for smokestacks. I can't do that in good conscience. But I also, I want to see the hardcore numbers. If there's other groups out there who will come up with the money in order to preserve them. In 2 weeks, can we get some sort of better understanding of that? And at the end of the day, I think it's the most important of those people who live in that area. It's their community, it's their neighborhood.
Correct.
So in 2 weeks, can we have some kind of presentation, or do we need to do something in the interim where we can get some more clarity around those things, around the community, around the TIF, around the preservation groups, around donations, or whatever it is, in order to then make an informed decision in 2 weeks? Because again, this is one of those things, I don't like that our default is to defer. I don't like that that's our default mechanism. I like to we need to move things forward, whether we say yay or nay. So I'd like to know what this looks like again in 2 weeks.
Well, tonight was intended to have a discussion about it, frankly, and not to take action, to present you what we know so far. We certainly, it's in our wheelhouse already. We know how the TIF performed last year. And so I'll be happy to share that with you even before 2 weeks for the next council meeting. And you can all see what kind of income is being generated from that, number one. I mean, that I bet they're on the phone. If not, I'll call them and ask them how much money they're willing to put up, but that's in their court. And then third, if I could rely on Councilmember Mitchell, if he wants to have a community meeting or something to get the pulse further, it sounds like he already does pretty well, but of the neighborhood over there, that's certainly something we can do. We're going to have the meeting, by the way, we're going to call a meeting for those property owners. And when we do that, we'll ask their opinion as well.
Correct.
That would be a great time.
That'd be good.
Any further discussion on this issue? And if I understand it, Mayor, in the next 2 weeks, Bennett will come before, or we will be presenting some type of comparison from the Bennett Group.
We have that in a nutshell, of course, tonight. And I had hoped that Mr. Bennett would have been with us this evening, but apparently he must not have been available. But we'll be glad to have him ask if he can join us next time. We'll bring you the information about the TIF district, and we'll report to you back, of course, after the meeting with the.
Okay, thank you. No.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Can we just have the information that Mr. Bennett has provided pushed out to the members of council so we can look at it?
Sure.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I would ask that include the original proposal for full demolition as well.
Okay. All right. Any Councilmember Griffin? Did you have your hand up?
I'm okay.
Okay.
I was just stretching.
Okay. Any other discussions? If not, no actions required on this item. Our next item is item number 16.
Right.
Well, no, we're done with Ways and Means, actually.
No, you didn't get a report from real estate yet.
Real estate.
Oh, yes, I see. Item 16.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The real estate committee met yesterday afternoon at 3 o'clock. I must say that Councilman Rappel gave us a beautiful reading yesterday. I think the mayor's going to call on him during council meeting to repeat that, what he provided for us at real estate meeting. We had 4 items on our agenda yesterday. All 4 were approved for recommendation, including the first item was regarding the low-lying area. If y'all got specific questions on this, but otherwise I'd move that we approve the real estate committee's recommendations as is.
Second.
Moved and properly seconded that we approve the Committee on Real Estate report as submitted. All in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Okay. Is there anything else to come before this committee? If not, this meeting is adjourned.
There's an annexation.
Pardon?
There's an annexation at the bottom of 16.
Piece it all. That's
That was part of the that was part of the real estate committee's recommendation.
Yes, A through D. Correct?
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
That the vote was from A through D.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Okay,
Is there anything else to come before this committee?
I got 5:29. I'll see y'all in about 1 minute.
As long as we're not here until 10 o'clock tonight, Mayor.
No. It was 11 o'clock last time. Mr.
11.
It was 11 o'clock.
See you guys in a few. Meeting adjourned.